Okay, so I am going to show you how to do this mandala. We're going to start with the center first. Well, first we start with a pencil outline sketch of our design, and then we'll go layer by layer on ink and decorating. Okay, so let's start out with our pencil outline sketch. Here's my pencil. Okay, so first thing I want to do is figure out my outside line and draw in these shapes. All right, so this is my inner circle. This one we definitely want. You want to make sure it's good and round and darkened up because we're going to keep it, okay? And then I want 4 long, skinny sort of petals, right? So I'm going to take my straight up and down line and I'm going to make that point right here, this line where I start my first petal, and I'm going to round it out and bring it to the middle, okay? And I'm bringing it over to this line, okay? I'm using my lines that I have as my guide to make sure that these are all nice and uniform. And then I'm going to take this one and do the same. So I have my first one. Now I'm going to turn my paper and come to my straight up and down line here and do the same thing. Turn to this line that parallels this petal. And then to this one. And sometimes I notice, oh, a line is a little bit off. I'll make a little bit of correction visually, okay? So at every point, every section, I stop and look and think, okay, well, they filled this in a little wider and this one a little wider. Okay, it will actually look a little more balanced. Okay? Okay. Then we're going to sketch in the outline of this other petal shape, okay? And so I want it centered, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to find the line centered, okay? That's this one. And then over here. Okay, so I come up here and then I can make the shape that I want it to be, and then I try to mimic that on the other side. And I use my lines as a guide. Okay, and I make sure I find my center one, and again, swoop it down the way I want. And sometimes I get it a little not the same as over here or whatever, and I'll just correct it a little bit. And I can definitely make corrections when I outline with the pen as well, which I do. And I use all these lines that I've created to help me see, like, okay, I swooped down halfway in between these two lines, so here I'll swoop down halfway in between, right? And I try to make it look as uniform as I can using my guiding lines. All right, this one seems a little skinny. I'm going to try and correct it a little. Okay. All right, and then all these little details in here, I hold off on all that, and I come and I figure I'll put in these petals next, okay? So they start outside of this line, and they go 2 layers out, okay? So when I came out, I came up and swooped like a little S, okay? And then I come down. So I've used 2 sections. This is the section, okay? So I'm gonna copy that in every 2 sections all the way around. And I see, okay, I start about here on that line, and I use these guiding lines to create that little S line again. I do it again. And if I kind of get it off a little, I'll just make corrections, and I can fine tune it with my pen. So for me, I don't get like too crazy, but if you don't think you'll remember to correct with your pen, then make sure it's perfect with your pencil. Oops, got that one a little wide, so we'll correct it. And we just keep going all the way around every 2 sections. I feel like once you kind of get the muscle memory on in your hand of that motion, it gets a little quicker. And I make reference points with my guiding lines of like where I need to start, where I need to cross over, and that helps me all the way around. One of the things to keep in mind when you're making your patterns to make sure that, so I used 2 all the way around. Now if I was to have used 3, would I have enough spaces to make even petals all the way around? So you should kind of count your sections prior, but I've already done that, so this pattern obviously works. All right, so we have that circle, and then this circle will be outlined, and we will start our next petals after that. All right, so, and those petals also were 2, and I started each edge of the petal at the tip of this lower petal, and I brought it up to this middle one and back down to the other tip of the other petal. Okay, so let me show you. To a point, Okay, and then we're going to go all around and do that in every single one. Now I always sketch out my pattern with a pencil, because if I don't like something, the way it started to look or whatever, I can say, oh no, never mind, I don't like that pattern, and I can take it out before I'm committed with a pen. And for you guys, it would be very good for starting out. All right. All right, so we got this row of petals. Now we're going to do this one. So this one takes three. Oh, here we go. This one was 3 circles. All right, so we go 3 levels, and again, I started at the petal and went to the other petal, but I came up 3. Okay. And I just kind of did like a round simple. So one of the things that I often will do when I'm doing this, I will try to choose like these were harder and these were a little harder, and so then I'll do one that's maybe not as hard. So just a little bit easier or less time consuming or whatever. This one reminds me of Christmas lights at this stage. I like to start at the top and come down and sort of pull my pencil, if that makes sense, rather than pushing. I like to pull it towards me. I feel like I have a little more control that way. Something under my paper. Okay, and there is our next row. However, if you'll notice, I did an outline sort of all the way around it, and what I do on that one is I just, I try to keep my pencil the same distance away all the way down. I'm going to make it kind of meet there in the middle. And I do this all the way around before I start my next layer. It's just a little added detail. And see there, I got out a little bit, so I'll just kind of correct it. And when I do my pen, then that thick extra part will get erased, so I don't really worry about it. So unless it's going to confuse you, don't worry about it. But if it is, then you can go ahead and erase it. And I mean, basically, you just want to really take your time and make sure that you keep that same distance out from your original row. And it just means taking your time and really watching and going slow. So, for example, here this line is slightly not in the center, which was sort of the gauge, but as I was going to make it look more even with these, I corrected a little. So now I had to correct here, like I have to keep correcting. So it's not, this is why we want our paper prep to be precise. And there we go. Got that one a little tight, so I kind of auto corrected it. So for every section, like as I finish, I kind of eyeball and look at the overall thing when I'm done, and I see if there's any spots where I kind of need to adjust. Okay, and then I move on. This is a really precision piece of art, so you want to get it all even and level. Okay, so there's that row. All right, let's go on now to this row, and we are going to notice this. This is going to get dark in this circle, so sometimes I like to kind of do that now, but we can definitely notice and do that when we use our pen. Okay, so we're going to do this, which these are coming from the tips of each petal, and they're coming out and swooping up to the center one, kind of like these did. but we're going a little bit wider with the base. Okay, so that's our next and final row, and then we can move to outlining with pen and then adding in all of our little details. All right, so we're going from petal to petal and out to the end. So I'm gonna come up and swoop in. So I notice now where I swooped, and I try to use that as my guide for my other side. Kind of messed this one up. Happens. Okay, so there's our first one. And then we can come through and do it on all of them. Again, as you go, your sort of muscle memory in your hand for this little pattern will get easier, but that doesn't mean you want to go fast and get sloppy. You still want to be precise, and sometimes I'll be doing this and I'll notice, oh, I'm getting a little fast and sloppy, and I'll slow back down and get a little more precision, like what is this petal? There we go. All right, there we go. That's our last row of petals for our pencil sketch for this. So now we can switch to the pen outline for the whole thing, and then I go back and I add in all the little details row by row. Okay, so I got my pen, and I'm just going to kind of go through here and start outlining. And when I do this in pen, I go really slow, and I sort of check each section to see if I need to make some corrections, okay? And I knew I wanted a center to that, so I do that. And then I move on out. And I just start outlining all the way out. next row. Okay, so I have 2 petals worth out, but as we talked about, some of these circles are going to get outlined and kept. So I'm going to go ahead and outline this one and then this one, so we have them. So the circle that we're keeping is the one that is at the tip of each of these petals. Okay, so very carefully to stay on my pencil line, because we know our circles are very precise, having been done with a compass. And come all the way around. And this will sort of define our layers. Okay, and then we did that on this outside of these petals. Now we're going to do this inner one. All right. And I definitely turn my paper where I can, trace that circle with my hand in the position of most control, instead of doing it and trying to come all the way around and twisting around where you don't have as much control. Don't do that. Turn your paper and trace. Turn your paper and trace. Okay, all right, so there's those rows. Now we're going to move out and we're going to do this one. And what I will do is I will start and go through the inner petals, and then I will come back and do the outside line all the way around, okay? And on this one, if there's some corrections that you need to make, you can slowly make those with your pen, just shifting a little to the right or left, depending where you need to adjust. Just be careful you don't mess up your art by adjusting too much or something. You see, I turn the paper to keep going. Okay, so now these are done. I'll come out and I will do this outer rim. And you'll notice for me, I like to come down to the center, or about where I think it will need to be, and then come down on the other side. That technique works for me to get this point in here right. Because if you're coming and then you go back up, if that works for you, great. But for me, I don't feel like I'm as precise. If I was to go like this, there's just room for error doing that. I don't like it. So I encourage, come from the top, come down. Again, that means you're pulling your pen rather than pushing. See here now, as I switch and we go up, I'd now be pushing the pen. For me, I have more control pulling it down, keeping it on my line with more precision. All right, there we are. So now, if we look here, this circle we keep. So I'm going to go ahead and go around that circle, which is right here. And it goes behind these petals, so I'm very careful not to take my line into the petal, because I want to give it that look that the circle goes behind the petal. Okay, so then we will do this outside one and then the outside circle. Okay, and now our circle all the way around. Turning our paper as we go. Keep our hand positioned in an optimal position. Okay, so now we have our basic outline done in pen, and we can come back in and we can add in all these little pretty details. Okay, so I'm going to add the details sort of layer by layer. So I'm going to take this sort of center flower area. It's really 2 circles, but we're going to do them as sort of one. They're smaller, so first thing, I'm going to bring my eraser and take all these little lines out because I'm not using those for my pattern. These are all our little guiding lines. Now, I always erase section by section as I go because you never know, as you start doing this on your own and you're making up your own pattern, you could be like, oh, I want to do this, and you might still use your lines to help you with your pattern. But I know in this little section, I'm not going to. So the first step, I got a little smaller pin because this is tinier detail. I'm going to do these lines, and they come straight out from the center and then parallel each other all the way across. So that's how I did it. I started from the middle, center up, and then I went out on both sides. And I try to hold my pen as steady and as equally spaced all the way across as I can. And if you need to, turn your paper, because then I can see my spacing. And now another thing that I would recommend is touch your line. Like, don't leave spaces between the outline of the petal and your parallel line that you make, because the gaps show, visually show and disrupt your pattern. But you also don't want to go over, because then it'll make your pattern look messy. You can see here I didn't touch, and you could tell. All right, so now I have that in. So as I look here, I put the little scallops all the way around the inside. So the key on those is you want them to be a uniform size all the way around. So really focus on that aspect. And again, as always, turn your paper as you go. It makes it a lot easier. Okay. And then I put a dot all the way around. And I try to place them in the same position in relation to each of the little petals. Okay, and then I did make this circle darker. So you kind of do that by going around your circle. Try to follow around it as close as you can, or as evenly apart. Same distance all the way around. And go nice and slow. And then you can just kind of go back through and color that in. And at this point, I'd look at it and think, okay, maybe I need to go out a little here, I need to thicken it there, whatever, and just adjust until it's about where I want it, okay? So then from there, I went around and I filled in these. I made a little loop and then colored them in. And then I went through and put this little piece to make it look more petal-like, and then little circles, 4 in between each petal. So that's what we'll do next. And sometimes I think it helps to just draw it in and then go back and color. It kind of helps with that muscle memory to get all your shapes the same if you're not coloring them in between. Okay. And then we can color them in. Okay, so we now have our little metal pieces in and colored. So I'm going to put in this little line that makes it look like a little bit of a petal fold in every petal. And I used this reference line, but I curve it just a little. And again, as I go through, I turn the paper, not my hand. Okay, so those are now in. So now for this circle, this center portion, I just need my little circles, and I put 4 across in between here. And I determined that number by just putting in the first one and seeing how many fit. And then I knew after that I needed to do 4 for every section. Okay, so we have our center completed, and now we can move on to this next circle here and this next layer, and we will do that one. So the first thing that I did is I came in and I put a little outline on the inside of each petal, and then I put a line down the middle and lines radiating out to make it look like leaves. So these are more leaf-like than petal-like, and then I did lines here that follow the circle. So they curve slightly with the circle all the way in. So that's what we're going to do next. And I typically, again, start from the middle and come down on both sides. And then put your line in and lines out like this. And you want them parallel even though they're slanting up, okay? And then I come over on the other side and I use where they're touching the line. That's my guide to bring them on the other side. Right? And you want to be very careful. As you can see right here, I went slightly over my line. It happens, but the more it happens, the more messy your final project will look. So be careful about that. Go slow and easy. And then we just come and we do this again all the way around. And what I like to do the same piece all the way. So I'll do the outlining. I will go all the way around, and then I'll come back and I'll do my lines all the way around. I think it, as I said before, kind of creates a muscle memory in your hand as you're doing it, and you end up with a little more consistency in your pattern as you go if you do it that way. Okay, so I have finished going around and I have my little outline, and so now I can come through and I could just go through and do the center line on all of them, which is probably what I'll go ahead and do right now. And then when I get back around, I can add in the radiating lines. Okay. And then I go across all one side, trying to stay as parallel as possible. And then use that as my guide on the other side. Okay, now we want to do lines mimicking this circle all the way in. So parallel, I do it nice and slow and easy to make sure I keep them as consistent as possible. All the way down and through. And again, I turn the paper for my next one, and I kind of use these lines to know where I need to space the ones for this section. And we'll go all the way around. Okay, so our second layer here is completed. So the next thing we'll do is we'll come out to this layer here, and we will add in all of our details there. Okay, so I'm going to start with these little guys inside. Actually, no, I think I start with this. I make this little outline and add in these lines, and then I put this guy here, and this guy, and little scallops. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to bring it. And what I did, if you look here, it's deeper at the top and gets closer as it comes to the base. So wider and then skinnier as it comes down. So that is what we're doing here. And we'll go around and we'll do that on all of them. And then in the middle, we'll run a line. and then radiating out. And then I have actually did the scallops on the inside here. However, I don't think I made my outline big enough, so I'm going to go ahead and do the scallops on the outside of my outline. This is my adjustment on the fly. Okay, and then I use this center line and this line to guide me on this little inner petal section. And I chose to make the width out the same as this width. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm aiming for. And then above this, kind of in the middle, do a circle, and then I colored this in. And a lot of times when I'm planning out a mandala pattern, I will kind of do the whole pattern on one of the petals or sections just to be sure I like it. And then I'll go around and complete it. So that's common for me. And sometimes I will do it in pencil, and I would encourage you guys maybe practice it in pencil on a petal and then, outline it and then take it around. So I'm going to do this little inner border all the way around. All right, there's our inner border all the way around. So now I'm going to go around and add in these lines all the way around in every section. Okay, and there is, oh, look it, I missed one. 2. How I skipped those. Let's fill those in. Get this one. And, oh, there's another one. I don't know how I managed to miss a few, but we'll get them filled in. All right, and then next I'm going to come around with the scallop all the way around. And this requires you to be very consistent. So I would encourage, if you have trouble being focused and consistent for a long period of time, maybe do the scallop on 2 or 3 petals, and then move and do something else, and then come back. Or if you're better at just all the way through, then do that. Go all the way through. I'm going to go all the way through because I like to power through personally. Okay. Looks pretty good. So now I need these pieces. So what I will probably do is come in and draw them all the way around, and then come back and color them in and add my dot. And luckily I'm coloring this in because that one's a little wonky, and I can kind of fix it. All right, now I can go through and start coloring them in. And then add my little dot. All right, the little Hershey Kiss petals are done. So now I just need to put my little circle dot in the middle of each petal. Being sure that I keep the same position, same size, everything all the way around. Okay, and then, so if we look at this one, the last thing we have is this little, it comes up and curls on both sides and has like a flower bud on top. I put a dot in the middle, and then I did 2 little circles. Okay, so that's what we need to do. And since I did my scallops, I'm going to come up a little higher and do this. All right. And we basically want to do that all the way around. Maintaining our positioning, and we use our little cross lines in our other pattern to help guide us. You can see in this one my line is off, but I can use my other pattern to tell me where I need to be. And one more. And that row, or that layer, is complete. So the next thing is we'll move on to our outer row. So our outer row, if we look here, I did 2 little Hershey Kiss shapes in between, and then did a little loop in the middle and colored it in, and then this cute little pattern here, some lines. I have this outline, thick outline that goes along in the middle, and then I have this sort of rainbow lined pattern. Okay, so the first thing that we want to put in is our outline. I mean, you could go along and do these lines probably, but if you're first, but I do them last. But when you're looking inside here, you kind of need to do this outline first, and then your little Hershey Kisses, and then this little flowery petal thing, and then your lines. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with our outline. And it's kind of a double outline. So I came and I followed my shape all the way. And then I did it again. And then I color that in. All the way through. And I can adjust my widths a little bit if I need to as I color them in. Okay, so there's my outline. And then what I did is I have these 2 boxes right here, and I use those to create my little Hershey Kiss shape. Okay, so there's that. And then I did this little loop, color that in, and then I use this center line to make my long petal, and then I made 2 shorter petals. And then from there, I continued this middle line up, and then I did radiating lines next. And then I mimicked them on the other side. All right, and then I just had to do this section, and I just started creating little rainbows and then tried to sort of parallel them all the way up and out. And I keep doing it until I touched the end, okay? And then I just did each section. All right, so that is this whole outer outline right there. So now I just do it piece by piece, and I would take and put in this little border all the way around on all of these. And on this one, I have to put both outside outlines first. Don't try to do both sides, okay? Because you'll have problems. Right up in here is where you'll end up with the problem. and then color it in. Now, it just depends how you feel. You can go around and do the border on every single petal, and then come back and do the Hershey Kisses on every single petal, and then come back and do the little petals here and the lines, or you can do the whole pattern in each petal and then do the whole pattern in the next one, and so forth all the way around. And I've been breaking it down little piece all the way around by little piece. And so sometimes I'll change it up, and I might even change it up for just a couple petals, and then I'll go around and do the whole border on them all. Just whatever it takes to keep you focused. But you still have to think about consistency throughout, and which portion of the pattern needs to come first. So order, of operation, etc. I also find it easier to do the first rainbow kind of a little bit higher, and then kind of go back and fill that in down here at the end. All right, and then we just keep on going around.